All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to where are we? Episode 11 of Rise, my new series of Rise.
Strength of a woman world on her shoulders. Fight through the noise when the world gets colder. 832, got the grit, got the fire. Watch her rise, watch her come higher.
All right, like I said, welcome to episode 11. Today is a very special episode. We are going to be joined by Scott from Scorpion Media Group with his JFK Assassination Predictions.
Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone gunman, murders the President of the United States, and then, less than 48 hours later, that lone gunman is himself murdered by another lone gunman. What are the odds of that?
Developing news, President Trump is ordering the release of thousands of classified documents tied to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy.
There's a 60-year cover-up. Congress found that, it was a plot. It was a conspiracy. There were multiple people involved.
Right, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Scott from Scorpion Media Group. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning, Robin. How you going?
Not too bad, not too bad. Like the news report there said, we did have Trump release some documents. I think it was 2,800, if I'm not mistaken, back in October of 2017 in regards to JFK. But people are waiting for some more, if I'm correct, with a new executive order.
Well, look, that's the what's hitting the media is that, they're going to release the files and, it's been a long time. It's been over 60 years, and they've had a number of releases over the years, and more and more information are coming out. And I do believe that had back in the trial with Jim Garrison, when they tried to bring the CIA guys to trial for this, that if we had all this information, we'd probably have a different result. And I think you can make some pretty good predictions on what really happened, and that's what I'll sort of do if I can. Yeah,
absolutely. Before we get there, we just had a bit of a chat about this before we went live today. I'm a big fan or watcher of Mike Benz. Mike Benz talks about the blob, the censorship industrial complex. And he was talking about the executive order from Trump and that he had examined the language of the executive order. So I just want to play the first part of this for us all to have a little bit of a look at.
Intelligence state, and he joins us now right off the top here to discuss what we could learn when these files inevitably come down. We think maybe in the next day or two. And Mike, it's good to see you tonight. Thanks for coming on. It's so interesting because there's been so much fascination with these assassinations for a long time. A lot of people wonder if we're going to learn that our government was perhaps involved in these killings. What do you think will be revealed when this comes out?
Well, this is hugely exciting that this is a week one executive order that includes not just JFK, but also RFK and MLK. I do need to ring the alarm, I feel, that in actually reviewing the language of the executive order, it requires that within 15 days of the order, the Director of National Intelligence has to present a plan to the President for declassification. Now, the current acting director of national intelligence, Stacey Dixon, is someone who has made DEI the #2 priority. And given that that Trump's pick for the head of ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard, is likely to experience significant political headwinds during the Senate confirmation process and is highly unlikely to be approved within 15 days, the plan for declassifying the JFK documents, according to this executive order, will come directly from Trump's primary political enemy within the ODNI. So this looks like it's set up for failure.
All righty. So that's Mike Benz looking at the language. Do you have any thoughts about that, Scott?
Well, yeah, look, who knows what these people are going to do. we're living in a limbo with this. But also, whatever we do get, we have to bear in mind that they've had decades to go through and scrub stuff. So whether we get a smoking gun or not, I mean, it's quite possible, given the state of political affairs that we've seen, that there's nothing there, and that they throw us a, oh, see, there you go. It was all crazy conspiracy. But I don't think so. I think there's a lot of information, and I don't think you're going to get some sort of smoking gun. Don't expect a big order saying, yeah, we approve the assassination or anything like that. I think what you're going to get is lots of information that then correlates to exposing the various factions in the deep states that were all involved. So, there's like the Ioannidis file, which was a guy, if we get these files of these things, like, for example, let me pick something a little bit more relevant. Perhaps if we had Lee Harvey Oswald's, all the information they have on him, because it's almost certain that he was Lee Harvey Oswald didn't shoot anybody on that day in November 22nd, 63. And he was as he said, it was a patsy. And I believe he was he was a spy himself. He was working within the deep state. Probably, you got to remember that Lee Harvey Oswald, when he, they use this, the story of him being a communist and working with the pro-Castro community down there in Miami and in Louisiana. And what we really know is that Oswald was a Marine who had a very high clearance, and he was stationed at a base in Japan at Sigi. It was a spy base which dealt with the spy planes that were flying over for the Gary Powers incident, and so it was a CIA related sort of intelligence area. And then after that, when he gets, he leaves the Marines, and he decides to allegedly defect to the Soviet Union. Well, it turns out that, the JFK assassination is very deep, and there's a lot of, it's a tangled web, and if you go back into it, you can see that Oswald was probably a part of the mole hunting team, that there was some defectors that came out from Russia. And these defectors, one of them in particular said, look, you guys got a mole in the CIA somewhere. And, would you be? He says, look, you got somebody inside your deep states, they're a mole. And James Jesus Angleton was the head of counterintelligence, and he's probably involved, and it looks like they were doing mole hunting, trying to flush out this mole. So they had a false defector program. So this false defector program was sheep dipping Oswald as a communist type thing, and he defects. He goes over to the Soviet Union, and they're doing something over there, trying to find out who actually the mole is. And he had different. Oswald's records showed different names. There was a Lee Henry Oswald. There's a Lee Harvey Oswald. So it looks like the weight, even recording his weight was had various different. They were all different. So it looks like quite clear that Oswald was this deep state operative working, under the counterintelligence of the CIA. And they send him over to hunt, and they bring him back. And interesting, when they bring him back to the U.S., he comes back, and they don't do anything to him really. So you think about this in the 1950s, the paranoia about communism and all the intelligence agencies, and everybody knew about Oswald being over there. and he's living there for a year. He marries a niece of a KGB agent, and he comes back to the U.S. and they basically give him some money and say, "On your way," and it just doesn't make any sense. And this is why, the basis for it. When he gets to the U.S., he's hanging around, the New Orleans anti-Castro people, the pro-Castro people, and the deep state operatives, all these guys involved with Operation 40, which was the assassination team to take out Castro. So it all links to this Bay of Pigs thing. And the Bay of Pigs was this CIA operation, and it basically turned out to be a great big failure because of the air support was allegedly denied, and it was a failure for the CIA, and they got mud in their face for this, and they had a lot of wins. The 48 Italian election, when they got rid of the sort of the communist leanings there, and they got the CIA intervened in the elections. They had the 54 overthrow in Guatemala, and then they had 53 Iran. And interestingly enough, that the Iranian thing was a takeover by basically the British government said, look, they handed it over to the CIA, and the CIA ran that operation. And it's about oil, and stuff like that. And Mossadegh was this nationalist, and they got rid of him and installed the Shah. So we had a lot of wins, in a sense, for the deep state. They're fighting the Cold War, and they're trying to find out who this mole was. And that even goes a little bit deeper in that Angleton, who was head of counterintelligence in the CIA, he was good friends with Kim Philby, who was high in the British intelligence, who was known as the traitor, who was eventually defected. And for decades, I do believe, Philby was in the Cambridge guys are giving information to the Russians. They were spies and traitors, and this sort of bugged Angleton because they were very good mates, and so he probably felt betrayed, and obviously he did, and so they're hunting for their own Kim Philby, and that's what Oswald was, and that's why he was sort of used.
I'll just preface what I'm saying. Clearly, Scott, you've been researching the JFK assassination for a number of years. All of what you've just said, if somebody does a simple search, JFK assassination, what happened to JFK, whatever it might be, whatever you put into your favorite search engine, I would assume that the typical conspiracy theories, and there are a number of them, are going to pop up, and without actually doing some digging, people aren't going to find the information that you've just told us this morning.
Well, look, you could probably sum it up. You cut through a lot of this. Actually, there is a lot, there's been probably hundreds of books written about this, movies. The JFK movie by Oliver Stone is actually very good. It's a good starting point for anything. There's a number of books and researchers, and I'll tell you something about all these guys, that are, authorities in this, that are writing. They're pretty much all in the same. They all come up with the same thing. It's not there is a lot of crazy conspiracies out there, but they don't really hold weight very long. And basically, the real deal, the guys that are there's James DiEugenio, who's involved with Oliver Stone, written a number of books. Jefferson Morley came out of the Washington Post, traditional, the media in the DC area, and these kind of guys have they've all come to the basic same sort of conclusion. So you don't have,
Sorry, Scott. Does all of these guys coming to the basic same conclusion, is that comparable to the narrative that the general public has been told?
Well, probably not. There's people talk about the mafia. I think there's a number of them. You got the mafia involvement. You've got the Johnson, President Johnson involved. You've got the deep state. You've got the allegations of the Federal Reserve and those kind of things. The Federal Reserve one's a bit of a false one, and James Corbett did a expose on that. That probably is not the main motivation, or even involved in the JFK did sign some stuff attacking with the silver certificates, and it's alleged that the Jim Mars, who was a earlier researcher on this, used to wave a $20 bill and say, look, this has got something to do with the Federal Reserve note, and say, look, the Federal Reserve, we're after him. But this pretty much has been debunked because JFK was just rubber stamping previous policies that were done by the previous presidents. So it really comes down to the narratives. Now there's a couple of really, really good books, and to start on this, one is called Unspeakable, JFK, and it's written by James Douglas. And now I first came across that one was Ray McGovern, the ex-CIA guy, recommended it in a post or somewhere. I saw it on the internet, YouTube, and he said, "Oh, look, this is a good one." He was an old guy that was criticizing the Gulf War, Ray McGovern. He's still around, but he's probably in his 80s now, I assume. Anyway, he sort of said, "Look, this is one of the best books." And then RFK Jr. mentioned it, much later. You can find that recommended that book. So anyway, that comes highly recommended by RFK, James McGovern and myself. So. Anyway, Unspeakable is a really good one. And, the narrative is pretty much the same. The elements of having the mafia in there, the anti-Castro Cubans, the CIA, and, the Johnson administration, the FBI, and these kind of things, it basically is that it looks like, the military, I think the military were the ones involved in pulling off the hit. The CIA guys, Alan Dulles, was almost certainly the controller of this. So when the Bay of Pigs collapsed, and the Alan Dulles and the top three guys in the CIA involved in this were sacked, and Alan Dulles was the longest running CIA director since the world, and he was involved prior to during the World War II times with the the intelligence services then. But now he was the longest running and very dominant character. But I think the military, in short, the military viewed JFK as a colossal threat to the entire Cold War establishment. And stemming from the Bay of Pigs, they were extremely, bitter. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That the CIA guys had mud, thrown in their face. They lost this. It was a colossal defeat for them, and they saw the whole Cold War policy coming down. JFK had direct, lines to Khrushchev. He was talking to Khrushchev about peace and what and without any intermediaries in there. He was directly. There was no buffer in between the CIA filtering any of this. They had no involvement. He was doing things on his own. And I think this is the motivation for it. There's Curtis LeMay and there's a interesting discussion that happened in the White House, and at the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis, LeMay and I think it was Lemnitzer, who was the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So basically, military-industrial complex. Anyway, there's record of this. Reported that they confronted Kennedy and they wanted Kennedy to do a first strike on the Soviet Union. So we're talking nuclear war, and global catastrophe with this, and they wanted to do it, and Kennedy rejected that, and he walked out of the meeting and he said to one of his advisors, it might have been Dean Rusk, but anyway, he you can look this up, and He said, look, we call ourselves humanity or something, words to that effect. We call ourselves the human race. And he rejected this. So he was at odds with the military-industrial complex. He was at odds with Johnson, who was a unbelievable, virtually a mafia, the Dixie Mafia of the South, in a sense. If you study the history of President Johnson, this is like a guy's like almost a thug. He had a hitman, Mac Wallace, committed murders for him, and he was involved in all kinds of corruption. And I think they got together and they said, we got to get rid of him. So they brought in all the factions. So the military, the CIA did the operations. How the mafia fits in and the FBI and those kind of things is, it looks to me like the FBI came in the aftermath, in a sense. I'll venture to say that, they were forced to comply, basically. And Johnson was very close, but with Hoover, they were neighbors and everything. The mafia, some people will get a little bit trapped and go, oh, well, it was the mafia that did it. And we got proof. And there's really, authorities that claimed that years ago, who were investigating it, like Blakey on the House Investigations Committee and stuff. But the thing you got to understand about how they all link together. They all linked together with the Bay of Pigs under Operation 40. So it was an asset team that was trying to kill Castro. And they're a mix of mafia, they're a mix of the military deep, guys, and the CIA and the anti-Castro Cubans. This is a nexus. The nexus of the assassination team. I'm not talking about the funders, because there may be more and the people behind it, but the actual assassination operations guys are all have a nexus to the Bay of Pigs, Operation 40. It's not any mafia. So, there was something like 24, 25 mafia families in America at the time, of the Sicilian mafia. But it's only the certain mafia ones that were from Chicago, Miami, Louisiana, and even there's, the Texas connection with Jack Ruby. They're all linked, that same one, that like nothing to do with the New York mafia or whatever, the five families. So that's where, so they were involved. And it basically was simply the assassination teams that used to did all this covert work overseas. They just did an operation in the U.S. on domestically. And they were running around all over, Louisiana. They had these secret training camps to overthrow Castro, to invade Cuba, and, there's reports of Lee Harvey Oswald visiting one of those, and then weeks later, the FBI raids it and they find all these weapons and stuff and mercenary foreign guys, anti-Castro Cubans, and they made all these arrests. So there's a struggle within the, and the Attorney General was, Robert F. Kennedy. So you see this divide of factional things going on, but it looks to me like pretty much the main guys who are writing on this have all sort of come to the same conclusion, and I venture it becomes the asset teams got rid of them, and now of course the funders. There's a lot of media flowing out there now about the Mossad involvement and the Israeli government, and that involves the Dimona, the nuclear power plant. JFK apparently did not want, to give nuclear capabilities to the Israeli government, and this is where Angleton comes in, because he was very close, and he was like, if we could say that Dulles was the outside guy, the operations guy, Alan Dulles, coordinated, who was fired by Kennedy from the Bay of Pigs. Was still, and who later became, was on the Warren Commission, which is unbelievable. And Angleton was probably the inside guy working in counterintelligence, and he had motivations very pro-Israel. And so it appears that they at least, there's some evidence, some documents out there which, this may shed light on, who was involved. And I think together, a group of people got together who had common interest. Everybody wanted Kennedy gone.
Well, you've just run through a whole list. There's CIA, Secret Service, mentioned the FBI, Mafia, military-industrial complex, LBJ, Cuban connection, and just towards the end of what you said there, the Warren Commission. And if I'm not mistaken, they support the lone gunman theory of Lee Harvey.
Yeah,
Oswald.
I think people give it too much credit for the Warren Commission. I mean, it was the House had one years later, the House Select Committee on Assassinations, and they concluded that there was probably a conspiracy or words to that effect. The Warren Commission, it doesn't even have an index. It's volumes of stuff. And the people on that are very, very sus. Senator Schweiker was one of the guys later on who said, that it fell apart like a deck of cards. And so I think that's completely discredited. And without getting into all the evidence, because there's hundreds of little facts and incidents that occurred around the assassination with the just from day one. Oswald probably didn't shoot at it. For the record, it's pretty clear, I believe. It's a projection, but Oswald didn't kill anybody. They talk about Tippit. 90 seconds after the bullet blew up Kennedy's head, Oswald was then spotted by a policeman and the guy in the Texas Book Depository. They came bursting in. A cop had his gun drawn, looking for people, and they confronted Oswald. 90 seconds, and he's sitting on the second floor of the Book Depository building. 90 seconds after, drinking a Coke. And it was like they go, "What are you doing here?" And he goes, "Oh, I'm just hanging here." So this idea of him being, and there was a number of women on the stairs. There were two secretaries and the boss. There were two younger girls and another one who were actually on the stairwell, and they were watching the presidential motorcade. And I think the two girls went downstairs, and the older boss stayed there, but. They were there the whole time, prior and after, and nobody passed on the stairs, and the elevators weren't working. It was the only way Oswald could have gotten down there was, he had to fire those shots from the 6th floor and then run down the stairs, stash the weapon over in the corner, move some boxes around and everything. And, set some little bullets, line them up. It's just all bullshit. And so when he gets, so anyway, 90 seconds later, they find him, on the second floor drinking a Coke. So my theory is that he wasn't supposed to get out of that alive. And that's the Tippit mystery. I think that's where things went wrong with the assassination, was that Oswald got out of that book depository alive. And something went wrong. I don't know what it is, exactly. So a little after that, another police officer named Tippit is shot, and they blame Oswald for it. And there's all kinds of discrepancies about him leaving and who saw him and how did he get there. But the landlady of his house where he went says that Oswald leaves the book depository, and he's at his boarding house, and the landlady there said, "Here's a toot, like a beep beep," and looks out the window. There's a cop car, and then Oswald rushes off and leaves. And that's sort of all we know. But it's more they know. And then there's witnesses who describe a shorter, fat guy shooting, Tippit. So what happened with Tippit is unclear, but he probably some sort of involvement. There was, Secret Service agents, guys that nobody can even track down, that were all over the Grassy Knoll area, and in areas collecting footage from people, flashing badges and taking their footage. Yeah. Nobody knows where these guys they're unaccountable for, how they get there, who are they, there's no record of them. And it's been postured that what happened was that they had these teams in there. Nobody knew, and compartmentalization. So nobody knows that look, we're going to kill the president. They're told, look, there's going to be some incident, or you just got to collect everything from anybody. Don't let anybody go here. Or, they don't know that who they're going to kill, that they're going to assassinate the president. And the evidence, there's just hundreds of incidents of inconsistencies and stuff. 50 something witnesses saw somebody at the grassy knoll. The headshot.
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about was I'm just going to pop this footage up again. Scott, just let me remove the banner because you can't see all of it with it there. That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because it looks, I mean, I don't know, talk about, two shots. Is there one from the behind, in the left shoulder, and then from the front, or, what, can you talk to us about that?
Well, the shots that were fired, the official from Warren was that there were 3. Now Jackie reaches out and she climbs on the back, and she's picking up a piece of the brain of her husband's brain on the back of the and handed it to doctors in the hospital. Was carried it in her hand and gave it to a doctor. And the blood splatter hit one of the cops, the people in the back that were, and famously in the movie JFK, there was the Kevin Costner going back and to the left, back and to the left. You got to, if you see where the motorcade's coming there now, Oswald is way in the back there. Well, the Texas Book Depository is a rear shot coming down, and would have to then strike the president and Connolly, and whatever, maybe the windshield, on the back of his head. But the head goes back and to the left as if it's a frontal shot from the grassy knoll. So the grassy knoll is where that's taken from, but Zapruder filming, and it sure looks like a frontal shot, hits to the side of the temple up there and blows the back of the head out. There's talk about some guy being in the drain. Nobody knows how many shooters there really were. Certainly more than one. From a common sense point of view, I think that there was somebody at the grassy knoll. Maybe somebody it's quite possible there was a person in the drain there firing.
Well, there's been videos circulating on X, and I don't, whatever, just asking your thoughts about it. And they reckon that and Leander's asking about the passenger in the front of the car. One of the videos I've seen, and I don't see it, but the passenger turns around and shoots JFK.
Yeah, no, I think they say that the driver, the Secret Service driver, but nobody saw that. There's a lot of false things floating out there. I suppose anything's possible, but I think that's been the story that the driver shot them is one of those. Probably, it sounds to me like a deliberate psyops by the guys, blaming on that because well, look, they're all sitting there. There's people all over there. Nobody saw the driver turn around and shoot him. And that sort of theory came out. I think that's long been debunked. I wouldn't worry and get lost in these little things. It's I think the big picture is that there had to have been 50-something witnesses saw something at the grassy knoll. What I mean by something, they saw a flash of light, they saw smoke, and a lot of these were Texans. Obviously they're no guns, and they said, well, these old railroad guys are saying that it came here, we saw people here, 2 people. There was cars earlier. They saw smoke. They heard it. There was one guy that was underneath, and he said it went over his head. And interestingly enough, Howard Hunt, the God, his first name escapes me, but he was one of the Watergate burglars, and he gave a deathbed confession on the, and he names all the usual suspects. He sort of lays it on Johnson. So he's a CIA guy, and Hunt, went to jail for the Watergate burglary, and he gave this to his son. He gave a deathbed confession, saying that Johnson did it, and but obviously, if whatever Johnson did it, it may be that he doesn't have the full story himself, or but it had to have been the CIA coordinating, a government deep state coordinating this. It was Dulles, more than likely, and there's many different. Someone just mentioned he got shot in the neck first. It's unclear exactly. They say he got shot here in the front. The bullet went in the front first, and obviously that's not Oswald. So how many shooters were there? Some people say there was 6, or something.
Wow.
But at least we know that. But Hunt said that there was a French gunman that brought him over, was at the grassy knoll. And it's just interesting, because they were these same people that are all involved in this, all had connections to like the Europe. There was Gladio, which is another thing which sort of escapes a lot of people's. When you talk about the assassinations of Kennedy, you don't really get the Gladio. But I think there's another aspect that may come out of this, and that is Operation Gladio. So Gladio was basically the Cold War policy in Europe after World War II. So at the end of World War II, the intelligence service, the CIA, became the CIA, and initially it was OSS and the military agencies, but and MI. The British, British and Americans ran this thing basically in conjunction with a lot of right-wing groups. So, we took Nazis in for the space program, right? Paperclip and all that, and maybe 1,000 or something or over that. Thousands of scientists came in that were worked on the V2. Werner von Braun was the father of the NASA, and. But they also set up these stay-behind armies. So it's Gladio, and it's stay-behind armies all over every country in Europe, virtually every country, and they put them in place. They were generally tend to be extreme, they could be fascist, anti-communists, right-wing. Italy had a big problem with this. Even to the 80s, it was called Years of Lead, because they were assassinating people left and right. And you'll know how they operate is they will plant bombs somewhere like Bologna train station, and I think it killed like 80 people. I don't know. A number of people were blown up. They blame it on the left, so that you vote for their own candidates. The false flag thing. But this was massive. It was all through every country. They were doing it in France and Germany. Every country had aspects of this. Possibly the connections of the Red Brigades and the Baader-Meinhof were involved. So they're running these programs all over. Assassinations, public bombings. Italy, particularly. If you talk to some Italians, they'll tell you, "Yeah, we all know all about this. It's been rammed in our media. We all know." I think the EU even did some sort of declaration against it, official European policy. Trying to think of the terminology they call it, but it's all been acknowledged. And so if Kennedy's challenging all this shit, the whole Cold War policy of assassinations and this, and he's throwing they basically all got together and said, we got to get rid of them. And they brought in all the, everybody that wanted to contribute. They talk about big oil being involved in.
Well, I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, a lot of people might have a very straightforward answer, and maybe it is very simple. Why the files haven't been made public beforehand? And also, I wonder what your thoughts are about RFK, because it's not just assassinations in that family aren't just an isolated event.
Yeah, okay, that's a great one lead in because, you know, the RFK was connected to it. He was Attorney General at the time, you know, and he died on, you know, the autopsy report shows that he had powder burns on the back of his head, so he was connected to that, and the same guys were involved. Later, and they, you know, it appears that way almost certainly. But why are they not being released? So, look, there's people posturing on the internet saying, "Oh, you know, what's the big deal? Why can't we release them? You know, the net, everybody, there's no security secrets. There probably is security problems going to come if they released everything, and there's a couple of them which aren't just theories, hypotheses, I guess. You know, a lot of people died around a lot of witnesses died mysteriously connected to the assassination, starting with Oswald, you know, who died on the same day, and the Jack Ruby connection. And, you know, it just goes on from there. Jack Ruby later died of cancer in prison. And there was a lady that interviewed him named Dorothy Kilgarren, who was a journalist at the time. She was a TV personality as well. And she interviewed Jack Ruby and then told friends that she was going to break a big story. And then she commits suicide very, very, very soon after that in a very dubious manner. There's so many deaths that occurred. Jack Ruby's doctor was the assassination doctor for the CIA, Joan West. You know, this guy was involved in cancer and the Black Ops medical guy for poisons and all kinds of things. And it just goes, it just becomes. So the point is that what if they, in protecting, in preventing the truth from coming out, they were clipping people inside the U.S. You know, Mary Pinchot Meyer was a girlfriend of JFK, and she was shot, you know, murdered in Georgetown somewhere on the jogging, you know. And what information they have, there's all these elements of these guys, of a list of them. They just keep popping up. The railroad guy, I forget his name. He saw people at the grassy knoll, and he saw a flash there coming from the grassy knoll, and he was in the railroad tower, you know, railroad worker, and he was in this the towers there, and he dies in a single car accident. There's just so many of these people that die, and so I think maybe they're going to have to explain to the world, the American people in the world, that hey, they killed lots of people, and maybe they even have a mechanism. Now there's a documentary called Wormwood about the mysterious death of a bacteriologist in the CIA, Olson, and he in the 50s he falls out of a building, jumps or falls out of a building in New York City, dead. He's connected to the bacteriologist, and the CIA admitted giving him LSD in his drinks, and he's going a little bit nuts, and there's a lot of confusion and deliberate obfuscation, I guess, of everything. But he dies very mysteriously, and it's been acknowledged that, you know, they got some responsibility for that, if not directly killed him, threw him out of the building. And in that, the author Seymour Hersh, the journalist Seymour Hersh, who, a Washington insider, I guess you'd call it, but very renowned journalist, and he mentions that they have a mechanism. He mentions, of course, well, he did some research and they got some sort of mechanism for taking people out in the state. So maybe it's going to release that.
Well, yeah, it sounds like they're protecting. I like that word, mechanism. Sounds like they're protecting people questioning or
Maybe
having knowledge
the
about larger operations instead of just
yeah,
individual people.
yeah. Maybe the Mossad thing is, the government of Israel's involved, and they're going to find out more about that.
Yeah.
Particularly with the angle. I think that it looks on the face of it that a group of people, common interest, had everybody benefited. There's more to it.
Yeah.
It's and there's just way too many insane connections and things like that.
So, what do you when fingers crossed that the rest of the documents are released? What do you think, based on your research? What are your predictions about what will be within those documents?
Yeah, it's really hard to say. What happens if they've scrubbed everything and we
Yeah.
don't get anything? It's, oh well, there's nothing much in there, just the same old. What happens if there's deliberate stuff in there? I would say there's probably not. I just don't know how those processes internally work on who's watching this stuff. I mean, they've had a long time to fiddle with all this, and a lot of people were involved. All the agencies, Helms, the Bushes, it goes deeper. So I think that, but there's going to be more information that they probably can't get rid of. We could find out what, I guess for the reader, what about Oswald? What was his history? What was he really doing? If he was employed by the CIA all this time, or Office of Naval Intelligence, or one of the other, and was he paid there's stories that he was paid as an informant for the FBI, and that's why they used him as a patsy, because he was exposing these plots. Like the Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy was trying to end these plots against Castro, and Kennedy and maybe Oswald was doing that. He was doing both sides. So Oswald was one of these he was sheep-dicked. He really wasn't a communist. Very early on, this idea that him becoming a communist is a strange thing. He goes on radio. He hands out some leaflets. It was some sort of strange little operation where let's see who we can find out. Yeah. And so I think it's really guess, but I'm going to guess that if we get enough stuff, we're going to find out that projection is that Oswald didn't kill anybody. He worked for the government, and he probably liked Kennedy. There's testimony that he did, and that I'm going to say that Allen Dulles and the CIA Bay of Pigs guys, pulled this hit off. The Operation 40, the anti-Castro Cuba, because they're all connected all these guys that show up as suspects are all part of that. Even Woody Harrelson's dad, by the way. Here's a little tidbit of information. The actor Woody Harrelson's father was there were some mysterious photographs taken where the cops have arrested some tramps. The photo's called The Three Tramps, and there's these three guys. Two of them really don't look like tramps. But they look, and so these guys get arrested, and there's photographs of it. I think a famous journalist, one of the agencies, took these pictures, and it turns out to be pretty much Woody Harrelson's dad, who was a hitman for the mafia, believe it or not, in the Chicago, that same mafia group linked to the assassinate, the Cuban stuff. So, yeah.
Do you think RFK Jr. knows more than he has told the public?
Probably. Look, I could say that he knows that he recommended the book Unspeakable, and if you read, it's one of the best. And it's a very big picture as to why they did it. you can go, but yeah, I'm sure he knows. I would guess that after all this time, he's probably had access to people.
Want to ask your thoughts about Mike Pompeo. He was the previous director of the CIA, and I'll just add as well, I think I've still got Pompeo's picture here in my media assets. Mike Pompeo was the gentleman that plotted to kill Julian Assange. And also, as the story has been told by Trump, that Pompeo said to him, instructed him, asked him not to release any more documents. That's Mike. He looks a little bit different now. He's lost a little bit of weight since that one. What your thoughts are about Mike Pompeo? Because, as I just said, Trump has said Mike asked him not to release the rest of it. Who's Mike working for? That's what I want to know.
Well, he's obviously the deep state, CIA. They don't want this secrets being released, right? And they want to prevent the truth getting out there. What if, what if there is a mechanism for killing people in their own country? Yeah. What if these guys were going around clipping people? A lot of witnesses. There's people, saying there's 200 witnesses gone, and there's all kinds of one guy shot himself in the, said that he saw somebody else shooting Tippit, described somebody, and then he gets a bullet in the head. A couple of days later, this is right after, within weeks or something, it just goes on.
Let's say, the
credibility.
Mechanism. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the credibility of the staff. Maybe there's other big state actors involved. There's a lot of people say, "Oh, it's old Johnson," and he's certainly involved to some degree. President Johnson later said, that he said he believed there was probably another shooter there, and he weirdly stepped out of the election in '68.
I just wonder because, we know that clearly we can see with, debatable figures, general public, maybe only 20-30% of people are watching corporate media anymore. Nobody believes the governments, our leaders, all the rest of it. Nobody believes what the media has told us. Everything's a conspiracy and everybody's got a thought about it. Yeah. But we know that what we're being told isn't true. So, even if a mechanism is exposed for killing people within the US, let alone outside of the country, I think most people and the deep state would know that the general public, to a great extent, are already aware of this. So, that would lead me to think, well, perhaps it's something else actually that they don't want us to know. Because, to expose a mechanism of killing people is pretty straightforward. We all know that happens.
Yeah, overseas we know. It's wide, coups and so forth. How many coups we had? And the attempts to assassinate foreign leaders and stuff are multitude. And so I guess it's just they're just playing hardball and saying, well, don't release it anymore because we're going to be embarrassed. We're going to lose our power. We're going to get in trouble. Maybe there's going to be crimes. The deep state doesn't want to give its secrets away, the family jewels away. And interesting, there was Richard Nixon talked about some of this stuff, alluded to it on the Watergate tapes. And he says, look, it's going to be he talks about the whole Bay of Pigs thing. He questions Helms in one of his tapes. A rather rhetorical question. He says, well, who shot John? And he's pressuring Helms, director of the CIA at the time, to give him some information on Ted Kennedy. And Nixon was an operator, and he's pressure committee sort of says that there. Well, who shot John? Something like words to that effect. You can listen to the tapes, the whole Bay of Pigs thing, and later, people insiders have said, what Nixon's talking about, the whole Bay of Pigs thing. It's all public knowledge what happened there at the time. Anyway, the defeat of the operation. And, what Nixon's bringing up later, it's going to be very bad for the country and the CIA that they had a coup against the sitting president. And I think that's probably, if you listen to the Watergate tapes and you listen to those particular quotes, you go, well, it makes sense. I think it's really simple as that. But who knows what surprises we're going to find in there,
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're saying that, who was I watching this morning? I think it was Tucker talking to RFK Jr. And they were saying that all of the people that would be involved would be dead now. So I'm guessing that any kind of person being prosecuted for something wouldn't be anything that would be likely to happen.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, this is 60 years ago, over 60 now. Yeah. And, a lot of people are gone, right? But, so what other reasons could there be? I mean, who funded this thing? Did another state help fund this, or another intelligence agency? And look, and somebody just mentioned here, the South America and Central America, it just never ending. There's so many things happen down there with coups and counter coups, and but they're going to lose their power. They're going to have their name destroyed if it turns out that interests that are still around today were involved in this, and they might still have processes going. How would it look for the American people if they find out that all these witnesses were killed? Maybe even sanctioned, maybe autonomously, like people within the agency, the CIA. It could be mafia, saying, well, we've got to get rid of these guys, and they're getting the nod from somebody in the, with they probably didn't write a lot of this down even. So,
well, I mean, there's always the question too. People always post about Trump draining the swamp, all the different things, all the executive orders he's already signed in his, very short time as president, second time around. I mean, might this be another piece of the chessboard game where, perhaps some of the agencies might come under question, and that might be a further way to drain the swamp, as it be?
Well, yeah, I think that's it too. That would, expose everything and give them more leverage to throw these guys out, but remove their power, separate the operations guys in the deep state from the intelligence gathering ones. And, if you really look at it, if you look at the Bay of Pigs of that time, and we have these Operation 40, and you look at the big nexus here was that it was mafia, the mafia involved in the anti-Castro Cuban, the asset team. Basically, it was a CIA asset team of the military, the anti-Castro Cubans, and the government. And if this is exposed, it's going to hurt their operations. Maybe it's opened the door for all these other investigations. Maybe they're doing things today. Well, maybe they're doing things today. Yeah. Likely, and I think it's the Pandora's box, or it's just gonna blow the lid off things, and it's gonna prove that the conspiracy is right. I'm gonna say that we're gonna probably, if we get reasonable a look at the at the information out there, we're going to find that Alan Dulles and the exiled CIA guys who were embittered over a Bay of Pigs, they orchestrated it. They were the operations people behind this, and you couldn't have done it without them. And Johnson was certainly involved, president, but at what level, whether he coordinated the whole thing, Hunt's deathbed confession kind of indicates that. I think that they all joined forces together, and people might have different perspectives at the time of who was really running it.
Yep.
And the mafia guys were all connected to each other. Even Ruby, Jack Ruby was an old mafia guy allegedly he worked for Al Capone and then later Nixon, believe it or not, and he ran these nightclubs in Dallas and he's also connected to the Cuban guys. And there's witnesses that said, that they knew each other, Oswald and Jack Ruby. Now, I think the Jack Ruby's, because a lot of people say, once you give reasons for why one incident occurred, like people, have said to me, well, I don't believe that Jack Ruby was involved. He wouldn't have sacrificed his life to kill Oswald, if he was told to by the CIA. But you got to look at it from this point of view. If Jack Ruby was involved in the actual assassination, he's going to get the electric chair if they get caught. He's pressured by the mafia, those guys. Hey, look, you were involved, man. You were carrying weapons on the day. There's witnesses that saw him unloading a rifle, and if he's involved in the actual planning of this on obviously a lower level, and he was sort of forced into pulling it. So that's why I think the whole thing came apart when Oswald got out of that book depository alive. He's supposed to die on the scene, no questions asked, basically. And he somehow got out. Maybe Tippett, something that involving Tippett. He dies mysteriously in another part of town. When all the cops are sent down there, they send Tippett on some strange little, the other part of town, Oakland, I think it was, or something. And he dies mysteriously, and then they claim Oswald did that.
What was it about? I couldn't quite catch it. Something about fingerprints on a book, and it proves something about the school book depository.
Fingerprints on a book?
Yeah. No?
I don't know that I don't know that reference. Oh, there might be. Well, okay. There is. It could be the story about the one of the hitmen being Mac Wallace. They found his fingerprints in the 6th floor. I believe it was a 6th floor book depository. By the way, they identified Oswald 15 minutes after the hit, after the bullets blew up his head. So they knew 15 minutes, and apparently the police went to his address, but it wasn't the address the police had. It was the address the military intelligence had. It's just there's so many weird things that happened in this. On that morning, Jack Ruby, there's an FBI report, and Jack Ruby told his friend, "Let's go down and watch the fireworks."
An interesting thing
little
to say.
quote. Yeah, it just so happened to. So many little tidbits of information, and you could spend all day going through all the little craziness,
And there's a phone call. Sorry,
Oswald's final phone call? Yeah, this is an interesting one. It's worth noting. But could you imagine if you had Oswald's phone number? Who did he ring? He's in the police station, and you figure we could get the notes from the police, right, about some of this stuff, but they burned them or didn't take them. So, that's quite coincidental, isn't it? And so he makes a phone call, and the story goes like this. He goes, he says, "Look, I demand my phone call." So they take him to the office somewhere in the police lockup, wherever it is. And, they had these old time phones back then in the 60s. And they tell the lady there, do not put that in. Don't put the call through. Make sure that nobody answers it. So the lady, writes down the number, puts it down here. And I think there was like a shift change or something like that. But the one lady there kept as a souvenir, kept that phone number on a piece of paper. And then they looked it up, and it belonged to it was in North Carolina. So Oswald's trying to call somebody in North Carolina. And it was a guy connected to the military who had some, I think, some health problems and was sort of outed out. And he wasn't particularly a famous person or anything like that. And so some of the people in the circle said, "Well, what is that?" Well, that's a cutout. It's what they call a cutout. So you have a go-between. So if you're an agent or a spy and you need to contact somebody, you've got somebody that you contact. If there's a problem, you call that number, you call contact that person, and that person knows nothing about it's just a go-between.
Yep.
And so it's likely that person was the cutout, given the fact that it was North Carolina, he was ex-military establishment, and it sort of explains it. But you had a question about a phone call.
If she kept that number as a souvenir, wouldn't they call that number? And
yeah. Well, it was years later. It didn't happen like it happened probably. I don't know exactly when, but it's in the book Unspeakable and a few other sources, I believe.
Well, that's quite a souvenir.
Yeah. So it happened later. These things have come out over the years.
Well, I mean, here we are. We were just debating 61, 62 years ago because, of course, it's not November yet. But here we are over 60 years later. We started off the program with Mike Benz talking about his review of the language within Trump's executive order. So we shall see. And if it is to happen, it will be within a matter of days. Scott, is that correct?
Look, I'm not following, I think it's going to be a long process. And I think you're probably talking thousands and thousands of documents and analyzing and putting them together. I don't think you're going to find open up a file and you're going to get, there it is, smoking gun. Here's the order signed by this, the clip. I think you're going to have to piece all this together. No. Going through the records of these people involved, George Joannides, who, you could spend all day talking about these things, but there's going to be files that are going to carp up. Finding out what Oswald, what's on his tax returns, maybe. There's a lot of things that, it's unknowns. But I think we're going to find that they certainly that Oswald didn't kill anybody, and then he wasn't. As they said it, I think it was Senator Schweiker said he had the fingerprints of intelligence all over him. Oswald. He uses that quote, that word, that he had deep state. Essentially, he was operating in that manner his whole adult life, and and the huge nexus for the people out there is that. All those usual suspects that pop up in Dallas and in that area. Somebody mentioned Bush's father, the George Bush. He's probably involved, almost certainly. I would say there's some documents about George Bush. They probably had a huge team of people together, and people say, well. You can't keep a secret. A lot of people have confessed. There's more than you realize. And not to mention the Hunt thing. But there was even a guy who was over in Europe working in the intelligence, the American establishment. I forget his name, but he reported that there's going to be an assassination. Now, I think it might have came from Switzerland. He was based over there somewhere, and they go back. It's even, before the assassination, and so many weird things.
Just to play devil's advocate here, I mean, of course, there's many people around the world that just want to see what's in there. But we saw last year with the World Economic Forum and, of course, the World Health Organization, the theme of 2024 after the COVID war was rebuilding trust. And just playing devil's advocate, could this be an exercise from Trump in perhaps not rebuilding, but building trust within his own camp and saying, here, look, I didn't do something last time. I promised I would. Here it is. People are commenting. We don't know if things are going to be redacted. We don't know what state, all these documents are going to come in.
Yeah.
But could this be an exercise on Trump's side in building trust for the right, the people on the right, and also people in conservatives, people in the middle?
Well, it's possible. It's I hope it's not just empty promises that, hey, we're going to release them. I promised you before. I hope we get some substance out of it, and they're not all redacted, and there's more information. I think that there'd be so much information that a lot more pieces will be exposed. Hard to say in this world. Anything's possible these days, But I think if it does come out, and it's going to dramatically affect this rebuilding trust, is that all the operation methodology is going to be exposed. All their methods, whether Gladio doesn't really feature in a lot of the current, JFK circles, but I think maybe there's more to it. Maybe there's something in that they're trying to protect all their, not just the facts of this thing, but they're all their methodologies of assassinations, information, false flags, and it's going to blow the lid off them. So it will hurt them in the short run, because maybe the U.S. and the Anglo-American establishment, the UK, and these guys are going to find themselves under this microscope, whereas they're the perceived enemies, which could be the Middle Kingdom of China. They're going to not be hindered by any of this.
Well, maybe it benefits, if Bible reading Baptists read Book of Revelations, one world government. I mean, this could perfectly serve, that prophecy, because you just talked about the I can't say the word all the different agencies. Thank you. And all the different agencies, they've got to get rid of that in order to form, the one world government, because they get so many, not only the monetary, all the rest of it, religion, so on and so forth, but all of the agencies as well. I mean, this could serve a purpose. They expose it. They expose the operations, the mechanisms, say, get Doge onto it, say, look at all the money they've wasted, the lives that it's lost. We need to get rid of them all. And, here's one agency that's going to take care of everything. I don't know. Just me with my tinfoil hat on.
Yeah, well, look, but you got to, it's reasonable. When this becomes exposed, as I think it will, look, people like Tucker are talking about it openly. Joe Rogan, these guys are, they're the new mainstream media. These guys are great, and they're openly talking about this. So I think we're going to find out that Oswald didn't kill anybody. He was patsy, and that the deep state conspired, and they carried out this hit. using many devious means with the assassination, the Operation 40 Bay of Pigs guys were the operations guys. Angleton was on the inside. Johnson and the FBI. I kind of think that the FBI came in on it after the fact, and possibly Johnson, but there's other people that say Johnson was, more involved. Really, you can go through all this stuff about him as well, his history, and there's a case for that. But anyway, this team got, but they couldn't have done it. But definitely it was not done by like the mafia independently decided to do it. They all got together. Anybody in the mafia that was operating on this was under the control of the CIA guys, that group. The anti-Castro guys. Castro didn't do it. I don't know what other crazy theories there are out there. There is the one about the Secret Service agent in the front. Anything's possible, I suppose, really. But I think it's highly unlikely that. I think the motivation was the military-industrial complex, and the Pentagon and those kind of guys all hated. Look at North Woods; they had an operation to, went to the Joint Chiefs of Staff to do false flags and invade Cuba. Using airplanes and planting bombs in Miami. These are all standard tactics that the deep state has been using everywhere. Blowing up Bologna train station. In killing all those Italians and getting them to vote for their party. It's insane. And can I just want to we'll throw one comment out there. 832. That's the motto of it's a logo, right? That the Freedom Movement uses.
Yeah, Book of John, chapter 8.
Yeah.
Verse 32. The truth shall make you free.
Yeah. Just to let you know, that is the motto of the CIA. That's the
Stop it.
Yeah. It's the unofficial motto of the. Look it up. It's on the internet.
Wow.
Hey, yeah.
Didn't know that.
So, something we got to get the truth out there. Who killed all these people? Who killed Dorothy Kilgarren? Who killed Mary Pinchot Meyer on that street in Georgetown? And there's so many other George de Mohrenschildt was died under weird circumstances. I feel bad that I can't name off the top of my head that I can't name all these people that RFK, probably very similar. The autopsy report showed, by the way, RFK, the autopsy report showed that he had powder burns to the back of his head. Robert F. Kennedy was shot in Los Angeles, and that this Sirhan, was coming from the front shooting. And there's questions about the bullets, the number of bullets fired. Yeah.
Yep. So we've just got Martin. Morning, Martin. Good afternoon, Martin. Confirming
it's the unofficial motto. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not. I
did not
just
know
clarify. It is the unofficial one, but yeah.
Well,
anyway.
There's a fun fact for your next quiz night, everybody. It's not only the motto of the Cafe Lockdown and a whole bunch of other people across Australia in groups. It's also an official motto of the CIA. Amazing.
Yeah. So I guess, as Jack Ruby said on that morning, let's watch let's go watch the fireworks. That's all I can,
Yes. I think you've got another one, isn't it? Like, share, and subscribe while we watch the world burn. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, like, share, and subscribe. As the world burns, like, share, and subscribe. You just never know.
Martin, we're all unofficial CIA agents. We are with these things strapped to our hips, that's for sure.
I think CIA stands for Christians in Action, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to. Would you like to come back on if depending on what happens?
Yeah, look,
whether or not
I'd
Mike
like to
Pence,
be.
right?
Yeah, I don't mind. Look. By the way, this is research. It's like I think it was Newton who said you're standing on the shoulders of giants. I've just got this information from people like James D. Eugenio, Jefferson Morley. There's many people that deserve this. Oliver Stone. And I can't. I feel bad not mentioning everybody that was involved. So many really good researchers out there. The Mary Ferrell Foundation is a good. That's on the. That's a website conglomeration of all the, like an archive of all the JFK stuff, and yeah.
Well, we shall see, and yes, I think I've made some timestamps. You've made predictions.
Did I make some predictions?
In the hour. So yes, if something does come out of it with Trump's executive order, we'll have to see what that is and get you back on to talk about that. Is there anything else you wanted to say, Scott, in regards to just so that we've got everything? Well, look,
it's a little bit of just interesting, to throw out a little prediction and see what happens. I'm either going to be dead wrong or partly right, or but I'll just state for the record again, look, I think Oswald didn't kill anybody on that day. Alan Dulles is the guy that did the operations, and Angleton is on the inside, perhaps covering up for a number of interests. Oswald was a spy, mole hunting in the mole hunting unit. The nexus of researchers, the nexus is the Bay of Pigs, and I think we're that probably covers it.
Brilliant.
Wait for the fireworks. That's all I can say. Yeah. I've said it a few times. I blared out this thing. If I'm wrong, hey, I'm wrong, but we'll see. No, I tell you what, I don't think UFOs are involved. I don't think the Federal Reserve is a major, element of this thing. And I think the military-industrial complex got together and said we've got to get rid of them with all the other. And they reached around for funders and supporters, and it's mind-blowing.
Well, I just like many people around the world, look forward to seeing what comes of it. I very much appreciate you joining me today, Scott, and everybody in the comments, and obviously all of your comments as well that you've made. Let's see what happens, everyone. Thanks again, Scotty, and I will see everyone later.
Radio. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Strength of a woman.